Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Unfiltered discussions, unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Hello and welcome. I am back from a long vacation. I know you missed me. We'll talk about where I went, the Burning Man Festival in the middle of the desert, in just a few moments. But here's what you're going to learn on tonight's program. In 1908, a gigantic fireball tore through the Siberian sky, flattening 800 square miles of forest, yet no crater ever found. It's known as the Tunguska event. It defies explanation. Halfway through the hour, we will dive into this otherworldly mystery. Then, after that, applying for jobs has never been easier. Just a few clicks and you're on the pile, but there is a catch. Resumes drown in a digital flood. Applicants get ghosted, and that hope you might feel when looking for a job nowadays feels like a lottery. It's a trap. And the ease of applying for a job these days is exactly the problem. That we'll cover later in the hour. That is merely some of what you'll learn on tonight's program. I hit 6 years sober from alcohol today. We'll cover that and all things sobriety too. But for now, let's dive in.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
We are joined by foreign correspondent Tony Five to correspond about a foreign event that I was away at. We had a guest host on the show. I am back. That event, of course, Burning Man, which we're going to find out everything you wanted to know and some things you didn't. Here with Tony Five. Tony, welcome.
Foreign event indeed, my friend. Foreign event indeed. How are you, David? Are you survived? I am still here. I've always been here. But you have gone. You've been traipsing around the desert, I believe.
Yes, with my clothes on and with my clothes off. I was at the arts festival, Burning Man. It was a lot this year. There were some media reports about what was going on, and you reached out to me and you were genuinely concerned.
I was, when I first met you and you used to go to these things, it was I'd never heard of it before. It was very niche. So for those who don't know, it's this event in the desert, right? Where it just pops up out of nowhere. Everybody brings their stuff and whatever. I thought it was the worst thing I'd ever heard in my life. Short of like stepping in a landmine. I thought it was probably the second only to that. But you loved it and you're a massive advocate of it. And like now I've heard of it and it's on the news and all sorts.
Yeah, there was some bad weather that occurred early on. The wind, because it's like a big desert, there's no shelter from the wind. It blew in and destroyed things. One notable event that got destroyed was a little tent called the Orgy Dome. It completely got blown over.
I bet he did.
So that was very sad.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine the fluids flying around that night when the Orgy Dome was taken down?
It hadn't even been fully built yet, so I think it was just like a tent.
So it wasn't erected?
It was not yet erected. I hate you.
Poor old Orgy Dome.
But yeah,
even the Orgy Dome has problems, mate. Even the Orgy Dome has problems.
There was I think it was gusts of 70 mile an hour winds, which is like over 100 kilometer winds. our little setup was sheltered in by like trucks and other structures, so we were kind of fine.
Right.
We had this big shade thing that was going to collapse. So remember in Game of Thrones where they were like, hold the door, and they were like preventing the door from being opened or whatever? It was Hodor, hold the door. We were Ho-Po, hold the pole. There was about 20 of us holding the poles of this shade structure that was about to collapse on all our tents. But we made it through. But
you're in like a VIP section though, right? You have like a toilet.
Yes, but a VIP section just means a porta-john that's private and tents with electricity for the air conditioning. It's not fancy by any means.
Okay, but you had a good time overall? Did you enjoy yourself? What happened? So like each year this thing happens, right? It's a yearly event?
It is a yearly event, and this is related. Today I hit 6 years sobriety, which I'll discuss later in the show. So I went into the event thinking, well, I'm not going to do any mind-expanding drugs, or I'm not going to get drunk. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to do any of the fun stuff that people do there. So I was kind of like, well, what can I learn from this event? I've been 11 times. It was kind of like, well, I've gone in the past and I've expanded my mind and I've got to do really fun radio, but I get to do radio every day for my job. So I was thinking, like, how can I possibly expand my mind and enjoy myself and have this self-revelation that I'd had in years past? So I was kind of going in a bit curmudgeonly, I guess is the word for it.
Wow.
But I found myself pleasantly surprised. I found the radio programs that I did there. There's a radio station there, and I believe you call it a busman's holiday.
Yeah, so basically go on a holiday, do the exact same job. Exactly.
There's a volunteer-run radio station at the event there, which I volunteer at. But I found the shows there incredibly creatively stimulating. Like, they were so weird. I did a 2-hour show where I made everybody say their name was Donna. I made all the callers of the program say they were Donna. I called it the Donna to Donna hotline. It sounds really stupid, but it hit this really good intersection of stupid and smart that was so much fun for me. All my shows were like that, and I found myself kind of falling in love with radio. Not that I wasn't in love with it, but kind of becoming creatively invigorated by the work that I did on my vacation.
I must say, having spoken to you and messaged you since you've got back, I couldn't work out what it was, but you sound inspired. You've come back and you are, I thought you were stressed, and I always get it wrong whenever we message backwards and forwards. And I thought you'd been stressed, but actually you said, no, I had a great time, and you sound inspired. Like you said, a newfound love of the medium, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, artists from around the world bring these massive, beautiful artworks. They construct them out of nothing. They either tear them down or burn them after the end of the week. Mm-hmm. This shouldn't be a surprise to me that I found it creatively stimulating, even if it was radio and not visual art.
Absolutely. But like, how has the event changed over the years since you first started to like now? How is that? That's kind of what is it? It's always the same level of art. The only reason I know is that there's a very, very famous artwork that I've always want a tattoo of, and I think we've spoken about it before. I think it's the two adults facing away from each other in wire work, and then like two children inside, like touching hands. I think it's like the child within or something like that.
Inner child is what it's called.
Inner child or something.
I remember being out of my mind. This was before I was sober, and stumbling on it at night and being moved to tears. In the daytime, it's this sort of metallic structure of two adults kind of like hunched over back to back, looking very distraught, upset. You could imagine it was a broken relationship. Maybe it's a married couple. One's a man, one's a woman. But at nighttime, in this metal kind of pipework structure, which is a beautiful sculpture in and of itself, at nighttime, this inner illuminated structure of two children touching fingers, two innocent children touching fingers. Was a beautiful work of art, and it's just one of thousands. But it's pieces like that get brought out there that are just so moving. And yeah, it shouldn't be a surprise to me that I found doing radio work there to be very creatively stimulating. We did a coast to coast spoof.
I love that.
Which is this overnight radio program in North America that now it's a little bit too like QAnon conspiracy theory.
It's with a guy called George something, but it used to be with like a famous guy, Art Bell, if I remember right.
It's exactly right. It used to be about aliens and UFOs and like psychics and paranormal and like cosmic, projections.
Yes.
So it's this really like old school fun, conspiracy theory back when conspiracy theories were more fun.
And he was a famous broadcaster, and the beautiful thing about him is he never mocked anybody. He took them all as face value. He listened to them. He edged out the story. He never sort of made fun of them. And I still listen to the stuff on YouTube.
It's a great program. I did a spoof where we were like, making nonsense conspiracy theories. I connected the lines between the Epstein files,
Nice.
the Epson printers,
Nice.
and the Epsom salts.
Good for a bath.
Yeah, and I kept on calling them the Epstein salts, taking baths with them. Somehow DB Cooper and his what he does in the toilet, because Cooper.
Your brother?
Yeah, exactly. DB Cooper and DB. Well, if you change the C to a P, you can connect the dots there. We just had so much fun having ridiculous, surreal radio shows out there that it wanted me to bring that element to our program, which we sometimes have, but I want to have more of.
No, that's great. I mean, it's great for you to go somewhere, feel inspired, and come back, like you said, reinvigorated. Usually I go on a holiday or a break, I come back even more tired than I go, and I need a holiday to recover from the holiday, as it were. But your travel wasn't the best, though, was it? Coming back was a bit of a pain.
No, I got stuck in Chicago. I had to spend the night there. Never fly connecting flights, because if they get canceled on the middle leg, you are truly I'm here with Tony Five, foreign correspondent in London, England. This is the last show. I'm David Cooper. More on the Burning Man Festival up next.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Insurance may all seem the same on the surface, but having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like getting a speech from your third cousin's plus one at your wedding when you needed a speech from your best man. You wouldn't settle for just any speech, so don't settle for just any insurance. When it comes to getting the help you need, State Farm is the real deal. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Broadcasting intimate details and useless information from an undisclosed location in New York City. The Last Show with David Cooper.
We are back with foreign correspondent Tony Five discussing the Burning Man Festival that I just came back from. I was away for 3 weeks. Those listening would have heard a fill-in host, Caitlin Green. But we're back discussing what I was doing at a hippie romp in the desert. Tony Five, welcome back.
So, David. Now, you've tried to convince me to go to this thing for years.
Yes.
I will never ever go until there is a Hilton in Black Rock City, which is unlikely considering that they just build it every year. So I don't think Hilton or Marriott are going to put up their hotel just for, 3 weeks?
No, I don't think they will. And Tony's referring to Black Rock City, the kind of imaginary or created city that gets erected for this festival I went to from nothing in the middle of the desert. I don't think a luxury hotel is going to be putting up a campsite anytime soon, Tony.
But it also goes against the principles of the event, right? Because it's kind of, I want to say subversive, but it wasn't. It was created by kind of people who just wanted to be away from everything and wanted to enjoy their art and do whatever, right? Just do whatever they want to do. And how did you get involved in it, first of all? I never really asked you, because all I know is that you used to go and you were considered, you were a bumder, or what's it called? A burner?
Burner.
Out, whatever.
Burner, yeah.
So, like, how did you get involved in it, first of all?
It's a good question. You know, when I first went in 2013, it was just because I was in the party scene where I was living in San Francisco, and there's a lot of great raves and music there, and my friends were going, and a friend wanted to go, and he said I'd only go if David and his ex-wife are invited too. So the guy who had a little campsite, who didn't actually like me and my ex-wife, who's now one of my best friends, but before that he didn't like me, he said, okay, I'll let this friend go. David and his ex-wife can come, fine. But the funny thing is that friend didn't end up going, and so it was just me and my ex-wife with all these strangers.
Wow. And that first one, obviously it is a massive shock to the system, right? It, like, for someone like me, it would absolutely, like, I guess 99% of the listeners would be like, I don't see the draw to it. Like, going somewhere where there's no sort of running facilities like water, things like that. It's dusty. It's hot. You may not get a break from anything. I mean, if there's an ambulance or paramedic needed, like, it's like you're as far away from anything as possible. Yeah, your options are drive hours to the nearest hospital. If it's really bad, they'll helicopter you out. They'll medevac you if you really need it. But you have to pay for it. Yes, it's God bless America. Yes, of course you have to pay for it. Yeah, you pay for the helicopter. I was reading about that. So like what's the draw? What made you go back? So the first time, I can completely get it, right? It's something new. But what made you go back? And what makes you consistently go back? I mean, the first time you went, you were not on the radio. So, because now, like you say, it's a busman's holiday, but the second and third and the fourth time?
No, it's a good question. It was really wanting to party and be around my friends. But what I noticed is after going for 2 or 3 years, I had a friend who was into carpentry. He stopped camping or locating with our party friends and started working on art projects that were massive wooden structures. You know, me being interested in radio and broadcasting, there's a radio station there. So I naturally gravitated towards that. So the early beginnings for me, they were about partying. But then I kind of discovered the art and the more creative element, like a lot of people do. Those that did discover that creative element are still doing it now, many of them, my friends. The ones that didn't, don't go, because eventually you get bored of the partying and you can't handle the harsh environment if you're just there to, like, you know, blow your brains out and party.
And what's the age range, right? I know that there's quite old people there, but are there quite young people there as well, like very young?
Less so. I mean, I camp with a kid who's about 11, but I'd say the average age is about 30. You know, it's not really for like kids in their early 20s. Gen Zs don't seem to be going.
Yeah, because there was a poll taken of the entrance, and it was really funny. It was sort of mid-30s, white, tech bro type sort of people they were saying, and that was the headline. Like I said before, I would never read about this in UK papers. Like, it was something so alien, Burning Man, apart from there was an advert for an insurance company that had all these guys driving in the desert, and I found out later that was a video of the Burning Man people, like people driving in, but it was completely separate. I thought it was just part of an advertising campaign.
It's funny you should mention the demographics being in their 30s and white. You know, midway through the event, I've been trying to get Tony, to the attentive listener, I've been trying to get Tony to come to these things for years. So I have this campmate who's on his second year, and he just loves the event. His name is Kofi.
Okay.
And I'm like, well, we have Wi-Fi there because we need it for the radio station. Side note, you asked me what's changed over the last, 12 years that I've been going. Cell phones. When I first went, there was no internet, no cell reception. Now there's influencers taking photos everywhere. But back on topic here, I asked my friend to FaceTime Tony to try to convince him to go. And then all of a sudden, I realized I've asked my black friend at Burning Man to call my black friend Tony in the real world to convince him to come. And this is like a parody out of like a bad movie. It seemed like not even a microaggression, like a macroaggression.
A full-on aggression. And bless him, he was really nice. He didn't convince me, but he looked like he was happy enough with you.
He was. And then afterward, he's like, David, why did you ask me to call your black friend to tell him to come to Burning Man? Is it because I'm black? And I'm like, no, I swear I didn't do that. And he's like, yeah, right, dude. He was mad for the rest of the day.
Oh, bless him. No, it is like, so like, where will it go from here? Do you think this thing will morph into something else? Do you think influencers will ruin it? Like they've done Glastonbury places. Like I can only refer to Glastonbury as what you do, because I don't know anything else, right? And Glastonbury started, like you said.
Glastonbury's a music festival, not an art festival, so there are some differences there. But to answer your question, there's a bit of a crisis, right? These events need money. They need to sell tickets. And there's different tiering of tickets, like the ones that sell out last or cost twice as much as the ones that sell out first. So, you know, who other than young people with deep pockets who love their cell phones and Instagram to sell these tickets to? So there's a bit of an existential crisis. So I worry it will change, and the changes I'm complaining about will last.
Do you think it'll be sponsored by Apple or McDonald's soon?
I hope not. It's an event very against corporate sponsorship. You know, you go to a sports game. For you, it's football. For me, it's like hockey or basketball. 10 years ago, you just had people watching. And now if you look in front of you, there's just everyone with a cell phone. It's like, why are you recording this? It's definitely on YouTube. Like, why do you need a crappy cell phone copy of it? I don't know, but that's what it's like.
Well, that you're never going to watch again. And you see in front of you, sorry to use a pun, a sea of cell phones. You see a sea of LCD screens in front of you with people that are videoing a live event that you've got. I'm sure you've got better definition with your eyes than the latest iPhone 50. And doesn't it just take away like from the event? Like you said now, I think the draw for Burning Man is the isolation, is the switch off, is the, you know, just being around nature. I mean, your skies at night must be stunning. Like, that's one thing.
Yeah. Yes. The sunsets are gorgeous because it's a desert floor with mountains, 360 degrees of mountains around you. And so it's the most beautiful sunsets, most beautiful nature. It's like being on Mars. I mean, it's like the desert floor is very similar to Mars.
And I think those nights, that's one thing that's the draw for me. The nights, like the cooler nights with a completely unobstructed sky. I think for me, that would be the draw alone. That's amazing. That sounds incredible.
I think you should come, Tony. It'll blow your mind.
In the Orgy Dome. Sorry, did I finish that sentence?
No. You should come to the event. man. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I do think taking a cell phone out of your pocket brings you out of the moment at any event. I don't know why people do it. I remember 12 years ago, every year I've brought a Polaroid camera. And earlier in the interview, you mentioned these principles of the event. One of them is gifting.
Yeah.
So strangers who talk to strangers will give people little gifts. The gift that I give people is Polaroid photos. I remember 12 years ago, I would take Polaroids of people and they'd be like, oh, thank you. Now I take Polaroids of people and give them the Polaroid and they're so amazed. Even though they have their cell phone, they're like, wow, an analog photo of what just happened that's grainy and bad. That's amazing.
Something I can touch?
Exactly,
really?
exactly.
Something that you're not going to email me? Exactly. So I hope it will stay, what's the word? True to itself. I hope it will stay that for you. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it'll be interesting. As I say, when Hilton or Marriott turn up, I'll be there.
Well, hopefully you'll come next year. And Tony, I apologize about the microaggression. I did not mean to do it like that, even though that's how it came off to both you and him.
It was absolutely my pleasure being my early Jewish friend.
We are here with Tony's only Jewish friend, me, David Cooper, and Tony, I guess my second black friend, other than the one I made call you. I'm not sure.
I can't believe I've been pushed to second place after a desert storm.
Tony, thanks for being here.
Take care, bud.
After the break, an otherworldly mystery, a blast brighter than the sun, louder than thunder, and that flattened 800 square miles of forest, the Tunguska event. We'll tell you what you need to know about it and why it's so strange in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. From improving emergency response times to protecting against cyber attacks, local, state, and federal governments are innovating with Google AI. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American innovation.
Keep listening to The Last Show with David Cooper, because the alien invasion can wait. The Last Show with David Cooper.
In 1908, a mysterious blast leveled 80 million trees, 800 square miles in Siberia. It blasted brighter than the sun, louder than thunder, and yet no crater ever found. Was it a meteor, a comet, something otherworldly? Let's explore that. The Tunguska event here with Noah Cappe. It's Noah versus the unknown, or what it's become to be known as Noah versus me. Noah, welcome to the show.
Cue my theme song once we write it and produce it. Right now, obviously, we don't have it, but when we do, we'll drop it in there.
Just don't use AI, please. I'm begging you.
No, AI and I are in a fight. You know, before we dive in, I want to tell you something scary. I was talking to my AI the other day and I said, hey, do you remember the time I got the most mad at you? And it was like, oh yeah, it was the time you asked me to work on those floor plans and remove. And I was like, oh, I remember that. And I was angry.
It knew that you were mad at it. And did it feel bad? I don't know.
It remembered, and when it's got a robot body, it's probably going to break my neck.
Or date you, maybe?
Or both.
Oh boy, that's a terrifying thought.
Sorry, different show.
A different show. Okay, I remember watching this one on television, like some special covered it when I was in my early, 12, 13 years old kind of range. And I got so excited about it. This mysterious comet that could destroy a city. Was it even a comet? I don't know. But the evidence is like blurry black and white photographs. The history of trees that burnt. 80 million of them, and it happened in remote Siberia. What if it had happened on top of, Chicago? We would just be saying goodbye, Chicago, I suppose.
And we'd probably have a few more eyewitnesses. This is a fun one for us to chat about, a Noah versus the unknown, because I think so often we tackle the big, sometimes literally, physically, the big ones like the pyramids. And I know we've potentially got a Stonehenge episode coming up, which we've never talked about. But this is one of those where it's like, you can check off all the scientific boxes and say, this is what it is. But as always, there's a handful of little odd anomalies that make this maybe a little more peculiar than we realize.
Probably for me, the most convincing is this lack of crater. I'm not ready to say it was aliens, raining fire upon us or some ancient god angry with us. However, it is odd that if it was an impact event, that there'd be no crater, unless it was like millions of little meteorites that somehow didn't burn up in the atmosphere, were small, and burnt down trees. The truth is, I just don't know, but that's why we're discussing it. So, set the stage here. What happened in 1908?
Well, yeah, end of June 1908, sitting just over 100 years ago. And as you mentioned, Siberia. And Siberia then was probably similar to today, where this is not a heavy populated area, very minimal people out that way. But nonetheless, witnesses, including one witness who gives a pretty good account, and I'm not going to attempt to say his name, but basically say that the sky lights up this unbelievable color of blue. There's this whirlwind of fire and this explosion close to the earth that literally knocks these people backwards off their feet onto their butts. And what they discover after literally the dust settles is, as you mentioned, almost 800 square miles. That's for our Canadian listeners, 2,000 square kilometers of I can't say devastated or destroyed forest, because it was as if these trees were impacted from above and not from the side. You know what I mean? It really is like something exploded right over top of it and pushed everything kind of in a downward motion, which is obviously very rare for a comet or meteor.
Certainly it is. And a lot of the trees were still standing, just completely burnt, which is very strange as well.
Unbelievable for something of this magnitude. Like okay, let's just talk about the explosion side of things, because they relate it. They say it's equivalent to 10 to 15 megatons of TNT. And that's always one of those numbers where someone's sitting, listening to this right now, and they're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, of course. So megatons of TNT. I know what that is.
But you don't. So an easier way to describe it is it's 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. I'll say that one more time. 1,000 times the power of the atomic bomb. This thing blows up, and there are trees still standing. There's radiation being detected in the soil. There's a bunch of odd things that when they finally can get people and feet on the ground, they start to discover. But nonetheless, this witness says that he's knocked off his feet, and the sky lights up, and that it stayed bright for days. So this very odd kind of beginning to this story. And now people start to head up there and get their feet on the ground. And that's where it kind of gets even weirder.
It took a while between the reports, the incident, and then scientists actually traveling all the way to Tunguska in Siberia to look at this, though. It took about 20 years?
Well, and this is the thing, right? This is like where when you're telling a story that's over 100 years old, you get into the broken telephone of some people say that it was locked down from the government, that nobody was able to access it because the government shut this area down, which right away screams they're interested, they want access, there's something going on there. Even if it was a meteor or comet, that maybe there was materials, metals, things or whatever that aren't on this planet that they want to recover and reverse engineer. So for a long period of time, the area was not accessible through government shutdown. I don't know for sure, but you'd think people would want to go and check that thing out.
Some of the more wild explanations are actually plausible from a ancient mystery perspective. People think it was things like antimatter colliding with the Earth, small black holes. What are some of the more far-fetched theories, or the ones you like?
Listen, the same way you get frustrated with certain parts of our banters and whatever, I get so frustrated because I keep seeing these unbelievable videos of, two come to mind. There's one of farmers, I believe it's in Alberta, Canada, filming, and this is real. This isn't doctor whatever. Everybody confirms is real. A ball of light, like lightning. It looks like a giant lightning ball, and it's sitting 10, 15, 20 feet above the ground, this giant ball, and it's just ripping electricity, and it's sitting there, whatever. And then scientists go, oh, it's a very rare thing called, whatever. An astronaut recently on one of the shuttles is orbiting and takes their phone out and films this insane, like what they call like a spire. It's like this light turning into these red tentacles, like up into the like edges of space. Cue the scientists. Oh, well, this is a very rare scene event that we have a name for, and we know what it's called, even though nobody's really ever seen this thing before. I don't know. I find that stuff very frustrating. But, this has got radioactive components. It's got the broken telephone rumors of recovered elements that were whisked away, and I don't know. I mean, again, not a giant pyramid, not whatever, but a weird one. When you see the size of the space, you see some of the trees still standing. I don't know, man.
Regardless of what you believe or what explanation you like best, there is a kind of like wow and wonder factor here. Tunguska has to teach us something about how little we know about the universe, because it shows how little we know about our own planet in relatively recent history as well.
Listen, I'm not necessarily going with those kind of, wacky theories of saying it was a spaceship that exploded or it was early testing of a government secret weapon. All those theories are out there. I think that sometimes, Noah versus the unknown in this space isn't just about aliens. It's about acknowledging as well these unbelievable events that can happen from space. So listen, something explodes that close to the planet, creates that moment and that impact on the ground, to me is of equal interest and excitement.
It's not just about the aliens, it's about the friends we make along the way, like Noah Cap. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
And obviously those alien bodies were burned up on impact. I mean,
I was trying to say something nice with the friends you make along the way discussing it. You can find Noah Cap online. That's Cappe. Noah, what a pleasure it is having you on the show.
I'll see you soon, buddy.
That's the hope. Here's what we'll discuss next. Applying for jobs has never been easier. Think that's great? It's a problem. Companies get a tsunami of resumes. They ghost applicants at record highs. And those people applying for jobs are left feeling invisible. So, is job hunting a game of numbers where no one wins? We'll answer that in a few moments.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Streaming now on Peacock.
We sell toilet tissue and local newspapers. That is in order of quality.
From the crew that brought you The Office.
My name is Ned Sampson. I am your new editor-in-chief.
Comes a new comedy series.
Have you read this paper?
It sucks. But we are going to make it better.
Meet the underdog journalists.
I hope it's not too disruptive to have me shake everything up.
Don't be so self-defecating.
With major issues.
Oscar. Oh, God. Not again.
The Paper. Only on Peacock. Streaming now.
Exploring both interstellar and interpersonal space-time continuums. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Today, applying for jobs has never been easier. Just a few clicks and your resume is out there. Sounds amazing. Well, I'm not so sure. This simplicity has a dark side. Flooded inboxes, ghosted applicants, and of course, crushing self-doubt. So let's talk about why resume convenience might be the job market's biggest trap here with Future of Work correspondent at Business Insider, Tim Paradis. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks, David, for having me.
You wrote an article on this that argues that how easy it is to apply for jobs right now creates a whole host of new problems for people seeking jobs. What are these problems? Can you explain why something that seems like progress has backfired on us?
I think it's a situation of unintended consequences. You of course want to, if you're an employer, you like the idea of lowering barriers to entry so that you can get, a great pool of applicants, make it simple, don't discourage people from applying. It all sounds great. And if you're the applicant, you think, great, I don't have to spend as much time going through the process. I can really get in front of somebody and maybe move the ball down the field in terms of getting a job. But the problem is, the numbers just don't work out. It kind of, like I said, it's unintended consequences. You get so many applicants, then companies are overwhelmed. They feel like they have to use tools like applicant tracking software, which, a lot of job seekers that I talk to just absolutely hate because they feel like they're not even getting a chance to get through. And so it's just meant the numbers are so inflated that people who are applying feel like they have to just keep applying because it's a numbers game. One of the people at job seekers I talked to for this piece talked about being a numbers game, and then the HR managers and the recruiters and all those folks and the hiring managers then have to sift through this huge pile of resumes. So it's kind of just a mess.
And it's easier to apply than ever. Personalized cover letters, which is a trick from applying for jobs in my day. Side note, I hate that I have to say in my day now that I'm almost 40. It used to be this extra work that you could do to make yourself look really good. Now you can just ask a generative AI model to write a personalized cover letter or spruce up or tailor your resume for an individual company, and boom, you've got 50 different resumes. It's easy for me to apply, but this means employers just get stacks and stacks of digital paperwork, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And there's also, those tools are really helpful. And I think a lot of the recruiters I talk to say that the customizing your cover letter and your resume for the job makes sense, not just matching keywords that are in a job description, but also just showing, really tailoring it to show you have an interest in the role and how you might be a good fit. But the downside too is that with AI, there's kind of a sameness to a lot of these things, and everybody's resume can start to seem the same. And it's not just, lots of M dashes and all the things that AI likes to do in its writing, but just like, I don't know, I think it's just harder to for a lot of recruiters to see through, and they've got 50 resumes that look the same. What do you do then?
Many job seekers, like you interviewed a few people for your article, apply to hundreds, in some cases thousands of times without hearing back. What does that do to someone's sense of self-worth?
I've talked to folks, not just for this piece, but for prior stories, who it just can be crushing, as you said in the intro. It can just really, it can really lead to big questions around like, why am I even bothering, all that sort of stuff. At the same time, a lot of people feel stuck. They think if they believe it to be a numbers game, then it's understandable why they would just keep hitting apply, especially if it isn't that hard to do, because they just want to break through somehow.
Is cold applying for a job just submitting your resume through a job portal where you've met no one at the company, know no one at the company, have no personal connection with them? Is it kind of a dead end these days? Is there a better way?
I think in many cases it can be a dead end, but at the same time, again, job seekers I've talked to say at least it's something they can point to as being productive and demonstrable. I think that if you are cold applying from the experts I talked to, that's fine. You can do that, but then you need to, that's where the process really begins, not ends. You need to then go out and find people, even if it's just DMing somebody on LinkedIn that you don't know, but just saying, hey, I applied here. I was, hoping you could take a look at it, something like that. And it's also something you can, of course, do before you apply to get some insights into that. That's hard too, because again, the numbers thing becomes a problem. If you're on LinkedIn as a recruiter for, say, a major company, you're going to get a lot of DMs on LinkedIn too from job seekers. So it's not by any means foolproof, but it is a better thing than maybe just, so-called spray and pray, where you just apply everywhere, but then don't do anything beyond hitting that submit button.
That's what my girlfriend did when she got her first job in her career now. She applied to a million jobs and then tried to figure out on LinkedIn who the hiring manager was and tried to ask them for coffee. And of course, many people didn't respond, but it really went a long way when one of the people who did respond ended up hiring her. Let's talk about these great, quote unquote, great new tools like applicant tracking systems. They're supposed to help employers sift through the noise, but they often filter out good candidates, don't they?
They can. A lot of people who research this will say that, just looking at a resume and based on what somebody has done before is not necessarily a good predictor of what they will do in the future and their aptitude for doing something. So I think that's probably the biggest drawback, which is if you're just matching keywords from a resume to keywords in a job, you can tailor your resume to do that. And especially, as you said earlier, with AI, you can do that more easily than ever. It's just not necessarily a good predictor of how somebody would do in a job. So I think that's where recruiters have this very blunt tool of the ATFs, of the applicant tracking software, to see who might be good for something, but it's just not as good, as maybe a more in-depth conversation with somebody, or a lot of companies are trying to do assessments, tests, things like that to try to gauge how well somebody might do a certain role.
Talk to me about this Cobra effect that you write about in your article. What is it and how does it affect job seekers?
Yeah, it was one of the... she's sort of runs a career advice site and knows a lot about this stuff. And she was saying that it's a case of the Cobra effect, which was looking back, was essentially in this is sort of colonial India. They had to, there was a problem with too many cobras. And so the British government, and this is rudimentary understanding, so you may need to fact check me on this, but they essentially put a bounty on cobras. And so then people could turn them in and say, okay, here are the cobras that I killed. And, now there are fewer cobras. But then once they started paying money for cobras, farmers started raising cobras because it was a source of income. And then the British government realized what farmers were doing, and then they said, well, we're not going to pay you anymore for cobras. So then the farmers released all their cobras because they weren't getting paid for them anymore, so they ended up with more cobras. So her point was the idea of of the cobra effect is that the fix can actually create its own problems and could potentially even be worse than the initial problem it was intended to fix.
Interesting. So what are the good ways to find a job these days? Is it really just word of mouth? Someone you used to work with works at a company now, they refer you, you cut the line of noise of hundreds or even thousands of applicants. What do you recommend to people seeking jobs right now?
What you just said is absolutely the ideal, right? It's somebody that you either have worked with before, somebody that you know, somebody you can reach out to get around that ATS, and just so that you can get seen. If it's somebody walks a resume down the hall for you on your behalf, that's hugely powerful versus just being one of many numbers in a system. But the problem, of course, is not everybody knows people at every company, and if you're earlier in your career, you haven't necessarily set up that big network. You've got a bunch of other friends who are 24 and all looking for their sort of first real jobs, quote unquote, and it can be really tough.
Yeah, where does that leave entry-level applicants who don't have that established career and can't get a word-of-mouth referral?
I mean, in those cases, I've talked to folks who run career services office at colleges, things like that. That's where they'll say, hey, try to fall back on your alumni network, try to, try to get internships so that you can get that sort of face-to-face, so you get that email address of the person who's doing the hiring. So I think that's certainly, it all comes back down to sort of somehow making a connection with people and somehow standing out. We, not myself, but elsewhere at Business Insider, have written about people going back to paper resumes to drop them off places, things like that. Just anything to sort of stand out in some way without being, too bonkers in what you're doing in terms of one recruiter was telling me about somebody knew that somebody liked cupcakes, so they had a bunch of cupcakes delivered, and I think they still did okay, but just kind of funny that there are I guess anything that people can do to stand out within reason.
Don't get me started on the dreaded networking events or networking mixers. I'm getting horrible acid flashbacks about those. Well, Tim, thanks for talking to me about the article and about all this. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Tim Paradis is a future of work reporter at Business Insider. Coming up, more job discussion, what first jobs students are getting right now and what they got in the past say things about the whole economy and maybe the future of work itself. That's what we'll cover up next.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
This message is sponsored by Greenlight. With school out, summer is the perfect time to teach our kids real-world money skills they'll use forever. Greenlight is a debit card and the #1 family finance and safety app used by millions of families, helping kids learn how to save, invest, and spend wisely. Parents can send their kids money and track their spending and saving, while kids build money confidence and skills in fun ways. Start your risk-free Greenlight trial today at greenlight.com/Spotify. That's greenlight.com/Spotify.
The last show with David Cooper, where we apply quantum mechanical psychoanalytical astrotherapy to your problems.
Entry-level jobs out of university and college. Millennials like me stack shelves. They did retail jobs, and Gen Z cares for patience. And they like tech companies. Your first job out of college might reveal the future of the economy. So let's explore how generational job trends mirror economic shifts, from retail decline to tech's wobble to healthcare's rise. We are here with someone who's written on this. She's a senior economics reporter at Business Insider. Her name is Juliana Kaplan. Juliana, welcome to the show.
Yeah, hi. Thanks so much for having me.
Your article argues that entry-level jobs for millennials and Gen Z tells a big story about the economy. So why do these first job trends that we're seeing matter so much as economic indicators? Why connect these things in the first place?
Yeah, so I actually didn't know what I was going to see when I went to look at this data. right? I was just very curious. You can look at micro data of like folks who are in a certain age range, who are employed and have graduated from college, so like have a bachelor's degree and up. And I was like, I'm just curious to see how that's changed. I wanted to see, oh, people are probably going into tech more. But what we saw instead was that the data was actually like really a great way to describe sort of the ways that the economy has changed over the last 13 or so years. So like you mentioned, millennials, if we're looking at folks who in 2010 were 18 to 27, they had graduated, they were employed, no longer in school, retail is like a huge job among them. That pretty much tanked by 2023, which is the year that, like, the most recent year we have data on. So you could really see like the decline of retail in real time. And then, as you noticed, we saw nursing become a huge one for people who were graduating or who had graduated by 2023, right? So what we ended up seeing was actually like the ways that the economy is almost, I guess, not rewarding, but offering opportunities to younger folks, and where they're like seeing money or opportunity, or at the very least, like a job that's maybe easier to snag because it's plentiful. And it was just really interesting. Like you can see like 2010 to 2023, like the rise of Amazon, the decline of retail workers. And now we have like a really aging population and huge healthcare needs. So all of a sudden people are going into nursing en masse. And then software engineers like just slowly like rising up the list, which also made sense. Like the rise of big tech especially is like a really like very like lucrative, fun first, out of college job, or second out of college job even.
You mentioned aging population, baby boomers needing medical care, nursing care. Are there more things that this shift from sort of retail to coding and healthcare, I guess, to say it broadly, is there more that it says about the way the economy has evolved? Any other big takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like also the story of like how we live our daily lives, right? Like what we see is sort of like how our like lived experiences and day-to-day lives have changed. Like when is the last time you went and bought something in person, right? In 2010, probably quite frequently. In 2023, you're probably ordering it online on the website that is powered by those software engineers. And so then you think about also like where are the opportunities that are in person and maybe like easier to get if you're starting off your career. It used to be in retail. That's not the case anymore. Now it's like, oh, all the boomers are going to hospitals and healthcare. We are seeing worker shortages still because there's this huge demand. So there's a lot more money there than there might have been before. So it's like, you go outside and you look at how the world has changed. You maybe are like, oh, everything is locked up at the grocery store or at CVS or whatever. I'll order it online. And maybe your best friend who would have been the one stocking it is now the one being like, oh yeah, I'm doing tech support, the company that you ordered that from.
Interesting. No, I have gone into a drugstore, seen the toothpaste locked, and then said, you know what, expletive it. I'm just going to grab that toothpaste online. Are we watching the slow death of the retail sector right now? Is that what the data is showing?
Right. Well, we have seen retail in decline for a while, like starting around this time. And something that's really interesting and like we won't really know yet is this data goes up to 2023, right? So we saw like software engineer and big tech, and this kind of came at like the peak of like the post Great Resignation or like the Great Resignation era, where we saw tech companies offering all these like huge benefits, and like especially them in the zero interest rate era, where it was basically free for them to borrow money and offer all these perks to people. And that has obviously like declined and then some over the last few years. So I would be really curious, and we don't know this yet, but like we can kind of maybe see it in our daily lives. Like if we see a resurgence towards retail or like in-person spaces, I think healthcare is going to continue to grow as something that is huge as a sector and like very needed, especially because people are just going to only get older and we're not seeing just as many young people in general. So yeah, we saw already kind of the tanking of retail. I am curious if it'll come back and how the economy will respond to like the great techning or whatever it is that's happening right now.
I am a millennial. A lot of my friends out of undergrad went into retail, restaurants and stuff, but the sentiment was start there and get out of it. I imagine millennials kind of soured on retail as there was this decline going on. Do you think we'll see Gen Zs get disillusioned with tech the same way millennials soured on retail?
Yeah, I think we're already seeing it too, which is interesting because I call myself a geriatric Gen Zer. So, I'm the oldest of Gen Z. And, for my friends and peer cohort, the dream of the tech job was very much alive. But in speaking with a lot of Gen Zers and looking at the job market, a lot of folks are now kind of making the switch from well, what's something that can't be almost teched out, ironically, with the rise of AI and companies shrinking and so on. So I would be interested in seeing if we see more Gen Zers going into blue collar work. That's something I've heard from a lot of folks. Things where it's you can use AI to maybe do the work of an entry level software engineer, but they can't fix a toilet, or ChatGPT probably should not fix a toilet. Such doesn't have hands yet. So I would be interested, and I do think we are already seeing that shift, or people just going into fields where it's whoa, you can't really replace that with an AI. I think also we saw this kind of pre-Doge too. There was this huge movement of Gen Zers towards working in the government and federal roles. I think that's going to shift a little because those aren't as stable as they once were, but we were already seeing kind of this Gen Z okay, what's kind of the next big stable thing that will treat me pretty well.
One thing we haven't discussed yet is this rise in healthcare jobs, especially nursing. This is striking to me. Do you think Gen Z is answering a moral call or just chasing stability, going where the money is, looking for a job that has long-term viability?
I think it's both. It's funny. My best friend is a doctor, and I was I could never do that. I greatly admire you. I would pass out each and every day. But I do think that it is also a really stable profession, and it is something that you will always need a human there to do. I think also if you think about kind of the social aspects of it, there's just a lot fewer opportunities in day-to-day life to interact with people from all walks of life, to talk to them frequently. I can imagine that being appealing too. And it is also paying pretty well. If you go on TikTok, there's this whole slew of people who make content about being traveling nurses, and they earn hundreds of thousands of dollars every year to get to live all around the country. And even I was oh, that sounds pretty nice. I think this is an industry that's hitting a very appealing to Gen Z on a few different fronts.
The article's called Millennials and Gen Zers and Their First Jobs Out of College Might Actually Tell the Story of the Economy. It's in Business Insider, where senior economics reporter Juliana Kaplan works. Juliana, thanks for going over the article with me. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
After the break, we'll get reflective as it is my 6 years sobriety anniversary from alcohol. We'll talk what these milestones mean for people who struggle with substances. And I'll share some, is wisdom the right word? But I'll share something with you. That in a few moments.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
If you thought goldenly breaded McDonald's chicken couldn't get more golden, think Golder, because new sweet and smoky special edition gold sauce is here. Made for your chicken favorites at participating McDonald's for a limited time.
When your therapist won't take your calls anymore, there's always the last show with David Cooper.
We are here to discuss sobriety. I, host David Cooper, am an alcoholic. And today, a bit of a milestone. 6 years sober. So let's talk about that, what it means, and what these milestones represent in recovery. Here with mental health and addiction expert Yonah Budd. Yonah, welcome to the show.
Great. It's great to be here, David, and congratulations on the 6 years. That's huge.
It feels weird. I guess it is a milestone, but by now it's kind of a habit that it just feels a bit like another day. But maybe it shouldn't feel like that. Maybe I should do something to celebrate other than have a beer.
Yeah, for sure. For number one, I think every day you're sober is a celebration when sobriety is what you're trying to achieve. So absolutely today would be one of those grand celebrations. And my take on it after treating thousands of people with this type of disorder, alcohol use disorder or drug use disorder of any kind really, is that you're never really out of the woods, right? Like you think you're out of the woods and it's nice to feel that way and you feel empowered, but just, I've been sober for 6, maybe I could do a beer. Not a good way to think.
No, I do find that the challenges of it present in like new and creative ways. Like, for example, I can keep booze in my house now. I used to not be able to because I would drink it, but now I keep it. I don't, but my girlfriend could keep booze in the house and stuff. I found myself maybe a couple years ago struggling with like non-alcoholic beers that have 0.5% alcohol. They don't get you drunk, but it's kind of habit forming. I find myself going through varying degrees of comfort around friends drinking. So I find that there's periods where I don't want to be at bars. That's kind of new. I think year 2, 3, and 4 of sobriety, I had no problems going to bars just to socialize. Now there's nights where I'm like, you know what? I'm not feeling being around drunk people. But let's rewind here. This 6-year milestone, it's not actually my first time getting sober. About 7 years ago, I knew I had a problem. My therapist was pretty concerned about me. My girlfriend was pretty concerned about me. And I did quit drinking for about 6 months. And then I took a trip to Ireland. And I don't want to say anything disparaging about the national pastime of Ireland being drinking. But the national pastime of Ireland is drinking. Not a great place to go, at least for me. No shade on the Irish, but at least for me, not a great place to go when you first quit drinking.
Yeah, a couple of things. So rewind a little bit here. Near beers, near alcohol drinks, faux alcohol drinks, so to speak. They're all the rage, and they're wonderful for people who don't want to drink and watch their calories and such. But if you're holding something that looks and smells like beer, and you're an alcoholic, or you're holding something that looks and smells like a joint, but it really isn't. Maybe it's just CBD. It's a slippery slope, I think. So, when you're talked about going to bars, it's not the bars you don't like, right? It's the drunken people that, at one point, I'm sure you were one of them. And you look at the behaviors and you watch what's going on. I feel the same way, by the way. I find it rather obnoxious. It's funny for a little bit. And then I find, sloppy people obnoxious. And then, going to places where alcohol is being served, for me, like I have an issue eating red meat. I don't go to places where steak is what's prevalent on the menu.
You're not going to Outback Steakhouse.
I don't need a guy with a 24-ounce steak next to me, and I know I can't eat it as much as I'd love to, right? So why give yourself the injection of potential urge if you really don't have to? But you got to know what works for you.
I don't go to meetings right now, but a friend in AA told me that non-alcoholic beers are for non-alcoholics, which is to say, like,
I love that.
If you struggle with drinking, maybe stay away from these beers. And it's so easy these days with these drinks that have 0% alcohol that are kind of fancy and overpriced and don't think about it too much, because then you realize you're paying $5 for a small can of juice. But there are options that have 0.0%, which are what I gravitate towards these days.
It's interesting in Ontario here in Canada. We have alcohols now available in convenience stores and such. So I have people who are dealing with alcohol use disorder and want to be away from it, and they call me and say, "Listen, I can't even go pay for my gas because there's a giant display of X, Y, and Z, and it triggers me. What do I do?" I say, "Well, the answer is pay at the pump." You're never out of the woods if you stop paying attention.
As we kibitz, I'm thinking, like, what's the takeaway here? Do public conversations like the one we're having, I used to really like Craig Ferguson, the late night TV personality, and he would always say on television, like, I'm an alcoholic. And he was maybe the first media figure growing up that I saw do that. Do conversations like this normalize sobriety? Do they help challenge stereotypes? Does it make it easier for people listening who are curious about help? Does it make it easier for them to seek it?
Well, first of all, for sure, it's better for you. So let's talk. It's your celebration today. So let's talk about you a little bit. This is a great opportunity for you to share. I think it's very healthy. And I think absolutely it normalizes the conversation. And when we find out more and more people that we know in our lives, some of whom are famous and some of whom are just in our community, and well, wow, I had no idea you had a problem with alcohol. It makes it much easier for the next person to come out and have the discussion because they don't feel like they're the only ones.
Here's why I stopped drinking. Well, there were those concerned about my health, like that I was going to die, which is a whole thing in and of itself. But for me, one of the biggest wake-up calls is early in my drinking and abusing alcohol journey, I would go out and my behavior would be atrocious, and I would damage or fracture relationships by thinking I was funny, but just being mean or annoying or saying inappropriate things. Fine. I would wake up the next day after a scene like that and feel devastated. I would reach out to the friend that I offended and I would beg for forgiveness. I would try to make things right. But eventually this cycle of horrible behavior and like fracturing relationships due to the horrible behavior, eventually that cycle became like not that big a deal for me. Like I would just wake up and kind of not care. And that started to scare me. That my bad behavior while drinking and the impact it was having on my loved ones and friends, I stopped caring that was so negative. And that became new around the time I quit drinking. That was one of the scarier things for me.
Yeah, it's a huge wake-up call, brother, and I'm glad you brought that up. It's the first apology counts, maybe the second or third apology counts, and then eventually, with respect to your friends and family, they're a bunch of enablers that just allow you to continue to call and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was with you last night and made a mess," and blah 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 blah. Those people probably should have shut you down and said, "You know what, David? Nah, we're not drinking with you tonight." But let's not go backwards. When you realize the amount of damage you've done and you're out of control in the time of causing the damage, I think that's the real scary part. I think when you realize that, oh my gosh, I had no idea that was even coming out of my mouth, or that I even went to such a place, or I broke such a thing, or whatever. When you look back at that, I think the scary thing is, I think your wake-up call is with many, is you realize alcohol has so much control over me that I'm making stupid, dangerous, unhealthy choices, and I can't control it. And when you get to that place and do what you did, that's the way you get to a solution. But not everybody gets there, and it's hard to be honest with yourself.
It certainly is. Another thing was, you talk about stupid decisions, but rewind to 2019, just before I quit drinking, I was still working in my old career in the tech industry, and I was mulling quitting my job in order to be in media. And I had booked a guest that I watched on TV growing up, a guy I really looked up to. I had finally, somehow, I'm an amateur broadcaster at this point. I'm not doing it professionally. I had somehow finagled this guest that I really admired on my show, my amateur radio show at the time. And what do?
Show up drunk.
I showed up to the taping drunk. The interview went fine. That person is now a friend of mine. It didn't have any outward negative impacts, thank goodness. But I had to look in the mirror last night and be like, this is what I want to change my career into. This is something I take very seriously, media and radio. And I just showed up to a taping drunk. 8 days after that was my final drink.
Yeah, you got to, first of all, we everyone who's listening to this, you got to give yourself a break. You got to recognize that this is a disease, and it doesn't always something you can control. So now, anyway, thank God that you are where you are. You've done a great job. Hopefully, people out there can realize and become inspired. And look forward to talking to you when we get to year 7.
Yonah Budd is a mental health and addiction expert. Yonah, thanks for being a soundboard and celebrating this, I guess, milestone with me.
Yeah, man, I missed your bar mitzvah, so I'm glad I came for this.
L'chaim.
L'chaim, buddy.
Coming up next, if you type out a few paragraphs, can AI read that and tell you things about your personality? Surprisingly, yes, but that's not quite the whole story, which we'll give you in a few moments. I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show.
In the 70s, 4 young women were found dead. For nearly 50 years, their cases went cold. I'm Nancy Hixt, a senior crime reporter for Global News. In the season finale of Crime Beat, I share how investigators uncovered shocking evidence of a serial killer and hear exclusive interviews with the killer's family. Listen to the full season of Crime Beat early and ad-free on Amazon Music by asking Alexa to play the podcast Crime Beat.
We're here because your heightened awareness deserves heightened entertainment. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Can AI read personality in our words? Can it detect things about your personality, or does it just catch easy clues? Well, a new study opens the black box, showing where large language models find genuine signals, where they cheat, and why data quality and context matter. I'm here with someone who's done work in this area. He's a psychology and AI researcher at the University of Barcelona. His name is David Saeteros. David, welcome to the show.
Hello, David. Hello, David, in this case. And thank you for the invitation.
Of course. My grandfather used to call me David. When I lived in San Francisco, people called me David. I do go by David.
Yes.
Sometimes it can be hard. Let's jump in, though, here in plain English. When you say AI can read personality from text, what does that mean? Does that mean I can write a bunch of stuff and AI can infer things about my personality?
Yes, actually. I think this is a very good way of representing our work, actually. So it was very nice to do this. We basically prompted like 2,000 students to write for 20 minutes about whatever came to their minds. And we used that data to train computer models to detect personality. And they did a very good job at that. We have an amazing performance of these computer models.
So it actually succeeded at telling me things like I'm an extrovert or I'm depressed. I mean, what metrics about my personality can AI infer from text, or what did you try to test?
Right. So in psychology, we use a model that we call the Big Five model. And one of them is, you nail it, extroversion versus introversion. But then there are 4 more of those, like agreeableness, neuroticism, openness to experience, and conscientiousness. So using that framework, we evaluated the capacity of the model to say, hey, this guy or these people, this person is using words that are relevant for an extroverted person or are more probably more accurate to pair with an introverted person.
Was that the whole story? Like, did it do a good job, or did it do a good job for like reasons that are purely coincidence? What was the mechanism that AI was using to detect these things?
Okay, so this is going to be a little bit more of explanation, but let's try to unpack this. So basically, I mean, I've seen for a long time, like a super hype from computer scientists to try to apply these new AI fancy models into any sort of psychological or sociological phenomena. The problem with that is that computer science are very good at computer science, not exactly at psychology. So what they did is, I don't know if you have ever done something that is called the MBTI, but the MBTI is a super famous personality questionnaire that you can find online. And it will give you a group of 4 letters, so probably ENTP or whatever, and they stands for 4 different typologies, 4 different types that exist in psychology. The problem with this theory is that it has 0 scientific evidence. And computer scientists were using that to validate their AI techniques. So we were looking at a lot of that, and we say, okay, let's do something. Let's compare our real scientifically backed model of personality, which is the Big Five, with the MBTI. Let's present these results to the community, to the scientific community, and let's see what is the response. So we use 2 different data sets. And the first one, imagine that you are telling the computer to learn something from scratch. So imagine you are preparing a mathematical exam. And so you're doing your exercises from the textbook, but those exercises probably won't appear in the exam, just as you see that. This is exactly what we do with computer models. We give them a part of the data set for them to learn all the associations that they can spot. And then we test them on a part of the data set that we blinded them so that we can compare how good they were in detecting this association in a good way.
Interesting.
Yeah. So basically you have a test text from someone who is extroverted. We have the label as extroverted. And then we have, like, let's say, 1,800 texts like that. But we hide the 200 that are left in a data set of 2,000, So after the model has learned these relationships, we give them the 200 texts that are left without the labels, without this is an extroverted, this is an introvert.
And how did the model do?
And it's the task of the model to fill those blanks. And our model did quite good. So it was around 60% to between 60% to 70% accurate, which is good. It's not super crazy, but it's quite good. This is for the big five. Those will be the accuracy rates for the big five. But for the MBTI, we obtain an accuracy of almost 90%. So that's super high. But that's when the second part of our study came in, which is explainability. And as you said at the beginning, it's like looking into the black box of this language model, looking under the hood. What is going on exactly? What is the model paying attention to in order to arrive to the decisions? And we realized that for the MBTI, the model was looking into super evident clues, obvious clues in the text to arrive to their decision. Whereas in the big five, they were looking at real and theoretically coherent dates.
So what does that say about the fact that the model did better with this MBTI data set that isn't backed by good science versus this big five, which is backed by good science?
It means that computer models can be easily tricked. And so we need psychologists to be there to be able to spot these failures of the models, these technical failures and theoretical failures, in order to be able to say, okay, the model is going in the right direction or not. We need supervision, human supervision.
Going back to the basis of the study, like what words can we link to some of these personality traits? I see words in a summary of your study like music, world, hate. Hate is an interesting one.
Yes, definitely. Hate was one of the most important ones, and the ones that gave us a little bit of a headache for at least 2 days, because hate appeared for one of the traits that has nothing to do with hate, but is actually on its opposite side. So agreeableness is the trait that will have a person that is really amicable, super cordial to everybody. The fact that we saw hate appearing as a super important word make us really get into the gears of it, like trying to spot what happened, what went wrong. And what we realize is that when you put hate in a context, into a linguistic context, like into a paragraph or a speech, you can see that people are using it in a different way that you normally would expect. So in this case, for the agreeable people, hate was being used to say, I hate when my parents put up money for me for my university studies. So basically they were saying, I want to support them. I don't want to be a burden to them. And that is completely coherent with the theory of agreeableness.
Given the model's kind of questionable mechanisms under the hood, but accurate results, can we say definitively that AI can detect our personality in words, or maybe something else? Like, what would you conclude from your study?
Yeah. I say we have a very good performance of the model, but all the models can be improved. And this is what we wanted to do in future studies. Actually, there is a second study that we are about to publish in which we detect the differences between gender. And also we connect that differences with personality. And we are seeing like amazing results. But of course, the data set that we use, which is this stream of consciousness, right for 20 minutes, whatever comes to your mind, is super limited. And also the sample that we use, which is university students, it's, I don't know, like their topics, the things that they talk about are very limited. Like we wouldn't get the same results, like problems about college or whatever, if we were asking some like a different demographics.
Well, David Saeteros is a psychology and AI researcher at the University of Barcelona. David, thanks for talking to me about your study. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
After the break, the jobs young people choose after graduating are changing, and that says something about our economy.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. The only talk show with an introduction that mentions its own introduction. And that's happening right now in this introduction. The last show with David Cooper.
Begging for a mention. Yeah, you just want attention.
The general sentiment for young people investing their money is they have no clue how to do it. I mean, my only data point there is my father complaining about young people, but that view is not quite right. Gen Z are called the most investment-savvy generation, but what does that mean? From doom spending to soft saving, young people are thinking differently about money, work, even their trust in financial institutions. But those anxieties, those ambitions, those habits, let's discuss that with someone who's done research in this area. She's a PhD candidate in sociology. Her name is Zosia Cooper, and she works at the University of California, San Diego. Zosia, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Starting point, what made you curious about Gen Z's financial habits, and why focus on how they're investing their cash in particular?
Yeah, so what really made me interested is that the survey data, the most comprehensive surveys that we have on Gen Z's money habits, are showing that its investment is incredibly common among Gen Zs. So the most recent stat is that 56% of Gen Zs have some kind of investment. But I think even more striking than that is that of the investors, 80% of them started when they were less than 20 years old. So I don't know about you, but when I was 18, 19, starting a retirement account was like the last thing on my mind.
Yeah.
And so I was really curious about what is going on here and what's bringing all these young people into financial markets at such early ages.
Well, that's the great question, the generational interest. I can't help but think about like the early pandemic with all this GameStop stuff, with all these like new tech companies trying to encourage young investors to make investments. Is that what sparked it? Like, why are they more curious than my generation? Like, as you say, I don't think I knew what a retirement account was until I was at least in my late 20s.
Same here, probably to my detriment. Yeah, so I think that most people would explain this by talking about the internet kind of writ large. So there's social media and these sort of meme stock trends that are happening on social media where people invest in companies that, where the stock is really cheap, just because they kind of want to support that company, like what happened with GameStop. And, of course, there's lots of financial advice on social media that you find, some good, some bad. And of course, there are also mobile apps that you can now use to make investments when you're bored in class. But I think if that were even the main reason that we're seeing these trends, then we would see a lot more people investing. We would see even more than 56% of Gen Zs having investments. When I talk to people, what I am finding is that the sort of deeper story there is just this incredible anxiety about the future, or really, I should say, a sense of uncertainty. So, they are just starting their careers and they're really hopeful, but they don't know how things are going to turn out. And they're seeing, all the turmoil in the labor market and layoffs in these like tech sectors, which were previously seen as like the way to like strike gold in the 2020s. And they're also really, really nervous about housing costs. Everyone aspires to kind of like a traditional middle class lifestyle with a house and a family and like a nice job. But they really don't know if that's going to happen for them. And so I see investing, through their eyes as this thing that helps them feel a little bit more in control of their futures.
Interesting. This anxiety for their financial future is really what's propelling this. People you interviewed express guilt about spending, pressure to make the right financial choices. Is that where this is all coming from? Anxiety about the future?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And, as you said, people's consumption habits are also kind of linked to these anxieties. And so, people describe to me like going to the store and the sort of thought process that goes through their head when they're figuring out what to buy and like should they get their sweet treat or should they not get it because they need to save that money. And so to me this reflects the incredible pressure that some young people are putting on themselves to make all the right choices all the time.
Let's talk about institutional trust, which is a fancy way of saying young people don't trust employers, governments, banks. Is that true? Is that what's going on as well?
Yeah, so I actually wouldn't include banks on that list. I think that that they do sort of trust banks and financial institutions. I mean, they're trusting the stock market with their money, right? They are trusting the stock market to grow their money, which of course is not guaranteed.
So those other two, employers and governments, like, is that what young people aren't trusting?
Yeah. I think employers are probably the top of that list. So like I said, they really just know that they could be laid off at any moment, which, we see happening all the time. Everyone has a story or someone that they know that was laid off. Sure. They know that the work they put in and their effort isn't necessarily going to pay off. And so they're sort of trying to negotiate all this. Some people, use investment as a way to like build their wealth so that eventually they don't have to rely on employers anymore. So if you've heard of like the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early.
I have.
It's that sort of idea. Yeah.
That ideal, I don't know how true it was, but corporations sold generations like baby boomers this idea that if you work hard, you're set for life, you'll have your career, your pension, you'll afford a home. That's just completely not true these days for most young people entering the workforce.
That's right. That's what everyone hopes for, but they know that it's not guaranteed. So there's really no formulas left for how to make it. And the way that this is playing out is that we're seeing, all of that pressure come on to these individual young people, rather than, maybe having people press for more policy change or institutional change that could make people's lives better.
Things like getting rid of at-will employment. Now, back to the end result of this being young people investing more. Are you noticing a difference between young men and young women or any particular groups that stand out with their investment savviness?
Yeah, so one of the most interesting things I'm seeing is that the demographic makeup of who invests is changing. So there's always been a huge gender difference in investments, where with women investing less, but that gender gap is closing among young people. And I'm also seeing that young people of color are more likely actually to have investments at young ages than their white counterparts. So these are really unexpected trends that I'll be following really closely.
Well, I'm here with Zosia Cooper, a PhD candidate in sociology at the University of California, San Diego. Zosia, thank you for joining me. I appreciate you chatting about your paper with me.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me.
That's a wrap on our Monday night show. Thanks so much for tuning into it. I'm so glad to be back from vacation. Don't forget the last show available as a podcast. Just search Last Show David Cooper on your favorite podcast app or head to www.lastshow.pizza. That's .pizza, not .com. And at those places, you can find out details and subscribe. I am David Cooper, and this is, well, it's never the first show. We'll be back tomorrow night.
During that conversation, we're like, well, I wonder if it's the same with AI, right? Are we using a lot of power in AI that's not giving us a great benefit? And that's really what sort of kicked off a series of research efforts around this, trying to understand how do we make things more energy efficient?
So this was the 21st century equivalent of Newton's apple falling from a tree. Join me, Chris Hadfield, on the On Energy podcast.
Listen wherever you get your podcasts.